Greetings students and welcome to Capstone Video 1.3. We're going to be focusing in here on the rationale behind your project. What is your why? Why did you select this and why is it of value and importance to the educational community? And so as we're still playing with that first impression aspect here, this is an important one. This is kind of this is going to set the stage for why this is of value in your setting as well as the settings of other people potentially. Typically, as we look at your why, we're trying to do this in about 3 or 4 paragraphs. Again, that is pretty negotiable, but some of the key things you want to look at are found in the bullets here. For instance, why is this problem important for research consideration? Are you picking a pet issue and maybe there isn't much there, or you hadn't put a lot of time into it? Or if you've gotten this far, I would assume that you probably found a host of research on it to kind of give you an idea. So what is the importance of this for our time that we'll be looking at your research project? What national educational trends, demands, or current outcomes indicate a need? Maybe this is problematic in multiple settings throughout education or the workforce, and there are educational or workforce trends that are showing that. What initiatives or outcomes are important to a school or an academic workplace that make this project a good idea? In other words, are you going to set the stage for something that could be best practices in other places? That would be a wonderful addition to the education or professional community. Observation is another key thing. What have you observed in a classroom or academic setting that made you target this as a need? A lot of times this routes back to maybe that emotional appeal that you may have had in picking this. You've seen this, not just in your own personal classroom, but in other places as you've visited, as you've done casual observation. You see this as an issue and it's important that it get addressed. How would you describe the current gap between what you believe learners need to know and be able to do and what they currently demonstrate? Maybe that's something that you have to focus on a little bit here. One of those things, there's a gap between their potential and what the reality is right now. And finally, another direction you could go are what are the theoretical implications that inform the practical applications in the study? So in other words, you have this idea, this theory, your educated guess, so to speak, but it leads to some practical applications as we go. Now, these are all bullet points that could be used, learners. They don't have to all be used, but these are some of the springboards that can get you into these 3 or 4 paragraphs that kind of focus in on your why specifically. Why the relevance aspect of things. Why is this important for research consideration? So we kind of get into a little bit more. Explain this in your own words, but allow for the experts in the field to support you. You have a little bit of time here in Chapter 1 to address some of these things as they're mentioned by some of the experts in the field. You'll have more time to really flesh that out in Chapter 2. So that's why it's mentioned there, precursor to your lit review, Chapter 2. Ask yourself, is this problem I see in my experiences common elsewhere? I mean, that's an important aspect there. It's also important to kind of think about what's trending, and that gets back into the educational trends, demands, or current outcomes that indicate a need. Oftentimes you'll find this in work from previous classes as you've looked at things and trends have popped up in some of your coursework. You can consider a lot of recent changes in education. Act 10 here in the state of Wisconsin has led to some different changes in professional development, continuing education. Obviously, many of you teachers have been influenced by the Common Core state standards, and they are changing the way that you're doing your practice in your classroom. The new Ed TPA, the Teacher Performance Assessment, could have some implications moving forward. Maybe there are things in educational technology. And of course, there are a host of other things that might be in alignment with your topic. And so it's important to kind of tackle that a little bit if that has relevance to your topic specifically. Tying it together, how would you describe the current gap between what you believe learners need to know and be able to do and what they currently demonstrate? Focusing on this gap can be important. How is the population underperforming, or how are they missing the mark? And how does your solution you wish to explore help this? This could have massive relevance in the educational or professional community if you find a way to do something better. In other words, you build the better mousetrap. How does that get done, and how is it done more efficiently, and things of that nature could be a wonderful study to kind of go forward with. Again, we talked about personal observation. What have you observed in a classroom or academic setting that made you target this as a need? This is your chance to share what you see, and again, often has an emotional tie-in. And how does this align with what needs to get done? All of these are important aspects. And then there's the theoretical implications. We'll talk more about theoretical impact as we move forward in other chapters, but what we're talking about here with theoretical implications are simply this. Theory is simply an educated guess, and the implication is the impact of what could happen. So therefore, a theoretical implication, when we talk about it, this is my definitions moment here, is simply an educated guess of what could happen as a result of your suggestion for your project. And so it is going to end as a theory, learners. However, the more educated and the more supported that you can show that educated guess, the more you can tie into a gap, the more you can support that with research from other people and do some critical thinking, the better it's going to be able to stand on its own at the end of the day. And so these are important things to kind of take a look at as you're starting to put together the relevance and the rationale towards your project. So these are some important things to do some critical thinking on as you start to move ahead in the steps here in Chapter 1. Continued blessings on your work as you critically think and analyze these aspects and set the stage for the rest of your study.